Hey everyone, Shivoso here, and I'm putting a little prequel onto my video of the forecast because it starts out a little rough. And just to give you all a heads up, yeah, it's a little long. I'm using some new software. Using some new hardware and also reformatting how I'm doing it. So this one, not only is the astrology really complex and a lot going on, but it's also kind of new for me. So it's about 45 minutes long. For those of you who have time to listen, I'd really appreciate it. And for those of you who don't, well, I have my written one that you can find on Instagram and on Facebook that I got out a couple of days ago. But anyway, better late than never. Shivoso here, and on with the video. Doing my bi-weekly report on the astrology that's been going on. And yes, I'm aware that this is the 5th, and things started going off at the new moon on the 2nd. And all I can say is, yeah, it's been a bit of a ride for me too. Whole family came down with a sickness, colds and flus and things like that, right as the eclipse and the comet and everything was happening. So I'm a little behind. And that's, I'm just going to roll with it because what else are you going to do, right? Overall, I bet you all are probably feeling a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of, turbulence and uncertainty and things like that for sure. And eclipses are traditionally kind of known for that. It's just going to be turbulent, right? The eclipse was not just a new moon and not just an eclipse, but in Libra, but it was also conjunct Mercury. It's also conjunct Lilith, Juno, the asteroid Juno, Maki, and the South Node is in there, right? And I'm going to show you the chart because I can. I'm trying some new technology. Please be patient while I work this out. And here we go. I'm going to squish myself up into the corner. And this is today, right now, right? But let's go back a couple of days and look at the chart for the actual eclipse and new moon. And you can see that over here on the right-hand side, there's all of these planets that are squished into Libra and points. We've got the the South Node, the Sun, Moon conjunct the Sun, Lilith, Mercury, and Juno. And there's a couple others in there, Maki, which is a fairly recently discovered asteroid that kind of, we're still figuring it out as astrologers and what that actually means, but it's a deity from the Easter Islands. And ironically, the solar eclipse, which was visible only in a couple of places on land in the world, one of them was Easter Island. So there's Maki right there. And when the South Node is close to the new moon or the full moon, you get eclipses. And so this one's within a few degrees of the sun. And so we got this eclipse that's kind of like way off in the south side of the planet. But it happened anyway, right? And we all felt some kind of tension, right? There's a lot of uncertainty. We're going through such a big, epic change. And Libra is the sign of we, not me. So it's the opposite of the Aries stuff. And so there's a lot of collective turbulence, but it's also about relationships. And so a lot of you may be, and if you're really paying attention, have noticed that a lot of relationship stuff is kind of up. It's really important. Our relationship, not just with our intimate others, obviously family and things like that, but also with ourselves, our inner selves, relationship with the world itself, with the external reality, and international relationships, the big picture community relationships are all kind of somehow getting stirred up and brought to the fore of our reality. And this has all been indicated by the astrology. The thing about astrology that people really get wrong, I believe, is that they think, okay, what's this with the planets causing things to happen? what is the connection there? Where's the physics that actually makes that work? And it's when you dive into it, it's pretty obvious that it's not a causal relationship. The planets don't cause things to happen. The fact is that we're in an interdependent, interconnected universe, and everything is connected to everything else as we start to discover, as we delve into these quantum physics things. And that manifests as when you look at something external to yourself, it's a hologram, it's a fractal, it's showing us what's real, the macro and the micro, as above, so below. So the ancients, because the stars, if you've ever just laid out under the stars, you see how awe-inspiring it is, how incredible. You just have to look, right? And they notice the patterns. It's obvious. Even animals know the sun comes up and the moon does a cycle, and we're on this 28-day moon thing that actually is part of our physiology, part of our genetics, that we have this 28-day cycle. And the cycles were really important. And so obviously we can start observing them. And over thousands of years, every culture was like, oh, look, Sirius is here at this time of year. And when this particular planet is up, or wandering star, as they called them, was going backwards, certain things started to occur in a pattern. And you're like, okay, so everything is in cycles and patterns. And if we can look outside ourselves at repeated patterns, tides, cycles of the moon, cycles of the planets, maybe we can start to see a reflection there of what's going on within us and locally. And it's an incredible tool that transcends material science, because it's actually dealing with, okay, what's really happening here? And that's why I use astrology, because it helps me dial out to the big picture. It helps me see the weather. It helps me know that it's not personal, that I'm part of something larger than myself, and I don't have to delve into any particular religious lineage to do that, even though I am pretty spiritual. The thing is that when you see all these planets in Libra, Libra is all about relationship. When you see Venus in Scorpio doing its trine to Mars and to Saturn, as you can see here in the chart, even on the 2nd, we've got this Grand Trine in water happening. And we've got this minor Grand Trine over here with Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune, which goes on and on and on. I'm going to show you that a little bit later, how that goes. And at the same time, we've had this, I'm going to back it up one day, and there's the moon making another Grand Trine with this minor Grand Trine formation. These are all flowing trine configurations. It's flow and harmony. When you see all these blue lines, sextiles are cooperative, collaborative. They work together so smoothly you don't even notice it. And the trines are like, the gears mesh. Everything flows, right? And so we have this what we call a kite, because obviously it looks like a kite, with Neptune right here at the apex. And each one of these planets, Mercury, Sun, Lilith, and the moon, have all hit this point and got involved with Pluto, which is still retrograde as of the first and second. By the second, things begin to shift, and the North Node begins to do a little trine to Pluto. But, backing up a little bit, let's get to today and now. And you can see that Venus and the moon are now, right now, as I'm speaking, conjunct. And the moon, our feelings, our intuitions, our nurturing side, our maternal, feminine side inside of us and outside of us, is conjunct Venus, which is a strongly feminine sign in Scorpio, which is also feminine and watery. And it's trine to Mars, the assertive, aggressive, the let's get it done, no, courageous, and also aggressive, kind of contentious and conflictual. It can go either way. We got the masculine and feminine in flow in with each other, which means we can either have some pretty good arguments, unlikely with a trine, or we can see things begin to kind of like become apparent that need to be fixed, that need to be taken care of in our relationships, in our Venusian things, which are what we value, what we hold dear, what we hold sacred, the things, beauty, truth, harmony, relationships, money in our modern culture, all are affected by Venus. Scorpio is a mysterious and deep sign that has a kind of a harsh reputation, but really it's absolutely honest. It really does want to seek truth, the deepest truth. So that Venus is also trine to Saturn, the planet of limitations and getting it done right and timing. So interestingly, we've got this configuration that really just sort of puts us into a place where relationships are really up. We've got the eclipse, which is for the next 6 months is going to be adjusting our world. We turn corners at eclipses, and we have the new moon, which is planting new seeds. So we've all been experiencing quite a bit of movement that may be rather challenging to encompass. Neptune has been influencing it because it's been doing that opposition to everything. And that makes it feel, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. As we move along, let's see, we've got that, the minor Grand Trine, by the way, between Pluto, the planet of the unconscious, of power, of oligarchies, that is, regimes ruled by the elite and the powerful, hidden things. Uranus trine to that is already an epic flow, because Uranus is all about radical change. It's all about innovation. It's all about uniquely, it's earthquakes, and suddenly everything's different. Can you say Hurricane Helene, right? In Taurus, which is the earth, right? The earth sign. And so things we value are changing due to the deep plutonic forces in the universe that are correcting and bringing things back into balance, whether you like it or not. And you can't see it. It's just happening. You can feel the effects, but you can't see why it's happening or what's driving it. And Neptune, which is our dreams, our ideals, the transcendent, the infinite, the confusing, the unknowable, all working together to transform our culture. And we're in the middle of this. This is going to go on for many, many months and years. It's kind of been this interesting dance with those 3 planets for quite a while. I'd like to show you something if you guys will be patient with me. I'm gonna try to like show you just that minor Grand Trine, because I think it's so important that we recognize kind of what we're in here, right? And why it seems so epic all the time. There. Now we just have the minor Grand Trine. It's Pluto is in Capricorn. It's just about ready to turn direct and head back towards Aquarius. Neptune is in retrograde, and Uranus in retrograde. They're all kind of dancing with each other. Now watch what happens as we go. I'm going to move this ahead a week at a time, and it will quickly get into 2025, 2026. But watch the dance of these planets. Goes away, starts to pop back in. We're in 2025 now. They're getting more and more exact until we have like an August, almost exact. Then aspects of it start to fade away, and then it comes back, and we're in 2026, and there it is again, right? 2027, May of 2027, we're still at it. It gets really strong. June, July of 2027. Starts to fade away, and we're like, okay, nope, back again, right? So you can see that this is all kind of this long-term transformational pattern. And we're in 2028 now, and we're still getting some of it, 2029. So between now and 2030, we are basically experiencing these powerful, transformational, flowing trines between what are the transpersonal planets. These are epic generational changes. And we have spirituality, we have our deep unconscious, we have the shadow realms, we have radical change, innovation, the new, the unexpected, and sometimes violent, and foggy. It's all really uncertain. That's just going on for a long time. And when we got the kite formation, it just triggered it. And it'll do it again next year about the same time, by the way, 2025. We're going to get another kite with this almost exact same configuration, because this is just here waiting to get lit up over and over again as the smaller and faster planets move through. So this 2 weeks, this next 2 weeks, we're reeling from the eclipse. And oh, by the way, you may have noticed that or heard that there's some solar storms that are hitting actually today, yesterday, which could be kind of throwing us under the bus of kind of fatigue and things like that. It was really ridiculous that I got really sick for a couple of days with the ridiculous cold. The kid in my house got the flu. 24-hour mom was down. Everybody went down. We've all been sensitive and emotional and not really on our best game. And at the same time, what it's offered us is this opportunity to see where things are needing some work, needing some attention, needing some correction, right? So we can find our path towards uplifting things and making things better, improving it through the suffering of like even getting sick, and like being weak and whiny and, not feeling up for the efforts of holding any kind of masks up. Your true self gets to come through. So maybe that's happening, for me personally, but it's also just a reflection of what's happening internationally. Like all our shit is coming up for us to look at, and nobody likes it. We all wish it would be easier, better, different, but it's us. It's who we are, and it's what is happening. There's a lot of stuff from the 20th century that needs to be corrected and cleaned up. A lot of imbalance that's got us here. And the chickens are coming home to roost during our lifetime. This next 3 or 4 years is absolutely crucial. We're going to look back on this and go, that's when it all changed. From 2020 to 2030, we went through some sort of like sea change, and we're no longer in the same world. And some ways it'll be better, and some ways it'll be worse. It'll always be different. The thing I've been talking to my friends about is, even though this is really uncertain and really challenging times to go through, both personally and for the whole world, our real task here as incarnated beings is to not give in to despair and to give in to nihilism and to give up when things are so uncertain, because we're not the first generation. We're not the first civilization to go through a empire collapse, and something comes after. There is room for children. There is room for growth. There is room for love and to learn and become wiser. And we get wiser through adversity. Welcome to life. So that said, let's see. We've got the October 3rd, the Grand Trine with Venus, Saturn trine Mars. Saturn trine Mars has been kind of driving us to get shit done, to be more organized, to take care of business, or get really frustrated or overwhelmed by the things we have to do. Suddenly the lists are really up in our face. For a lot of us here in the West, school started in September, and so we're all in this like, whoa, whether you have kids or you're in school. Things just kind of accelerated. Obviously, we've got this election coming up and all of the craziness and madness that's manifesting there. And we're just in the churn, right? And I want to have you all support each other as best you can, which is what this whole relationship triangle is all about, is let's get it together as best we can. As you can see, there's a half sextile, a semi-sextile happening between Venus and these planets here, the Sun and Mercury. If I add in the Juno, the planet of committed relationships, marriage, partners, that kind of stuff, add in the north and south node of fate, it starts to complexify, but you can see it's all kind of like happening. Ooh, opposite Chiron, the healer, the wounded healer. Each one of these planets is kind of going to cruise past this opposition to Chiron. So this is all about healing. Look at this. Look at Jupiter down here. Jupiter has been sextile to Chiron and will be until like early December, because Jupiter's about ready to go retrograde in a few days. I'll get to that. On, what is it? Jupiter goes retrograde. Jupiter goes October 8th. So just coming up in a few days, it will turn around. And so it's basically stopped in the sky. Chiron's going really slow retrograde, and it just sits there in the sextile of expansive Jupiter and the healer Chiron. So no matter what's going on over here in the rest of the sky, we've got this sort of like optimistic feeling, this sort of like we're moving through a healing crisis. Now, of course, we've got, you can see that Jupiter's also doing now it's doing a trine that is going to hit each one of these planets as it moves through Libra. I'll just running it forward. You see the trine is still happening with all of these planets, even as we move into mid-month. But that trine with Jupiter puts that Jupiterian good luck, that Jupiterian optimism, that Jupiterian excitement and expansion and can-do kind of thing into this whole shit show that we're in, that maybe you feel like, yeah, we need that. We need a little hope here. We need a little like giddy optimism. We don't want to go too far, because Jupiter can go too far and kind of believe things that aren't true. But it's a lucky planet, because if you believe it's going to turn out well, that helps it turn out well. If you can see the big picture, the philosophical side of it, the Jupiterian philosophical side, you can see that this is all necessary. And it just helps you kind of like get down to another gear and make it work, right? Now, Mars is also going to be doing square to each one of these things. So Mars square, well, there's a challenge, right? Mars, aggression, assertion, courage, get her done, all about me, what I want, ego stuff. Square to the Sun, the Mercury, it's square to Mercury right now. And so it can kind of go either way, but it is a challenge that if we face it with our best consciousness, if we act not impulsively but intuitively, if we follow the wisdom principles, we can actually use Mars to our advantage. Mars is great. Aggression, assertion, boundaries, getting it done, courage to step into the hard conversations. It also can be, hey, if we're weak and not on our best game, we can just have stupid arguments or fights over nothing, or violence that leads nowhere but to more violence. And we know how that goes. So it's a challenge, Mars square each one of these things, but it's also kind of like, yeah, put me in, coach. Let's do this kind of thing. My philosophy is that there are no bad charts. There are no bad aspects. There are no true malefics. There's just archetypes and circumstances that push us harder than we'd like. And there's the thing. How much can you take and stay in the game, right? Without throwing up your hands and laying down and becoming a dead fish, or blowing up and going postal. This is the challenge of life. And our relationships, all of this Venus stuff, all of this, the Grand Water Trine, is absolutely necessary to that strength and resilience, that ability to engage productively with what's going on and what's happening in your life. So that's why correcting and getting your relationship straight and clean has been one of my missions in my life, to help people kind of have some tools to fly right with, because we need each other. We're not solo adventurers as much as our individualistic culture wants us to be. We are actually a collective, and community is vital, and intimate relationships are vital. And so this fragmentation that we're experiencing in our culture now, the way so much of our population is lonely and isolated and tripping, that's the flood. That's kind of like Noah's flood. We're like overwhelmed with fragmentation, with too much division and not enough collective work. But here's something that's really interesting. Is I've been reading about North Carolina and Asheville. I have a lot of friends and connections in Asheville, and they've been just wiped out. Their infrastructure was wiped out and by the hurricane. And despite the fear-mongering, bullshit memes, really, when you talk to people who are on the ground, it's amazing. They all met their neighbors. They're all sharing everything. They're working collectively to survive, to thrive, even with no power and no water, with, just a complete disaster around. They're just helping each other. And that's what humans do when things get really crunchy. When things are too soft and easy, we tend to like fragment off. We don't need people because people are a hassle. And so we tend to want to isolate. And we all saw that during the lockdowns, how hard it was to kind of come back out of our shell and realize we need people. But we all went crazy too without some kind of community and community effort. But my point is that we actually pull together under pressure. And so if the astrology, or if the world, or however you want to look at it, is going to throw us under the bus of fate, I have a lot of faith that people, human beings in general, will show up for their local spaces. And that's where we are at our best. It's really hard to run an ethical community without face-to-face communication, without connection, without common purpose. And nothing like a disaster to throw us under common purpose. So I won't say I'm welcoming the apocalypse, but I'm welcoming the apocalypse, because too much bullshit, right? And too much separation. So anyway, this week, because of the configuration, we have this great opportunity to do some work on our stuff. And it's not about completing it or getting it perfect. We get to work on our relationships. We get to work on our connection to others through the challenges that are coming up. And because it's trines and sextiles for the most part, we have that it's probably going to work out. It's probably going to flow. We may not see the results right away. We're not out of the woods yet. You may be really tired and sick and tired of the bad news and the challenge. Take a break. Find your way of restoring yourself as best you can, because we got a long way to go. And this is just planting seeds for us. We're going to work on things to get our lives into a position where we can feel a little less uncertain and a little less isolated. And this is just another step along the way. So moving right along with the astrology, like I said, Jupiter goes stations on the 8th. There it is. And it's hanging in there with that trine. The oppositions are still happening with Chiron. So we've got a lot of Chiron emphasis here. Mars and Venus are continuing to be in trine. So the masculine and feminine are working together towards some goal. Mars is in Cancer, which is a feminine, softer sign. So it's not quite as aggressive or direct as it usually is. And that helps, But Venus is in Scorpio. And so it's not in a super happy place. It's kind of serious. it's kind of serious. And Scorpio takes things really seriously and deep to heart. So it's a little mystical as well. It's a little mysterious. Let's see what else we got here. Lilith is going to go retrograde. Let me put Lilith back on there for you, because Black Moon Lilith is a really interesting point. It's not really a planet. It's a mathematical point that represents the unknowable, the uncontrollable, the untamable. It's been associated, of course, with Lilith and the mythology of her telling Adam and God to fuck off because she's not going to be put in a box and put into the sidekick position that the patriarchal religions wanted, I suppose. So it represents feminine power and the rising of that. And it isn't rational power. It's not directed towards goals necessarily in that same sense. It's more paying attention to everything and trying to find harmony and balance with everything. That's the feminine, everything. It's everything, right? So Lilith is in there working us over, and moving it forward. You can see that Lilith starts to go backwards and goes back through the whole sign of Libra over the next month, and then starts to go forward again and does it one more time. So it gets a little retrograde situation. That means it's going to do that trine with Jupiter. It's going to oppose Chiron. It's going to oppose Neptune. It's going to conjunct all of those planets. So it's really kind of influential, and we don't pay much attention to Lilith, but there she is, right? She is up in our face, and it really is time to bring all of that into balance and to give enough room to get out of our control, left brain, patriarchal mind, and let some chaos do its work. And yeah, we're not going to like it, but we can certainly enjoy the art of it, because it's all an art piece here. What else we got going on? Let's see. Mars squared those planets, did that. Pluto on October 11th turns direct in Capricorn and heads back towards Aquarius. It's doing its final thing on our systems, our structures, our traditions that it's been doing since 2008. It's just like, roto-rootering out a few more things before it moves on to the next archetypal energy of Aquarius, the future thinker, the collective, the technology, the innovation, all of that Aquarian stuff. But, all of the uncertainty that we have with our current institutions here in the West, you can see that indicated by Pluto's transit through Capricorn, from the financial crisis of 2008 to the election gobbledygook that we're in now, the whole two-party system ridiculousness that's just obviously super corrupt and failing. And it's the only thing we've got, so it's the best we can do right now. Pluto has been exposing all of our shenanigans under the ground and shaking our faith in those things so that we can rebuild it. It's death and rebirth. So Pluto has been working us over and will continue to work us over, but it's stationed, essentially. It's sitting at 29 degrees of Capricorn and just sort of hanging out there. It moves real slow. So it'll be into Aquarius in November. And so we've got another month of this kind of stuff. We get to go right around the election, right? Let's see, the 10th. Oh, by the 13th, the moon's moved forward and it's in Aquarius. We've got Mercury enters Scorpio on that day. So it moves from Libra to Scorpio. And so we get out of thinking about relationships and harmony and beauty and getting things, trying to make decisions about things with our Libra scales and make sure everything's fair, to the more witchy kind of intuitive side of thinking, right? Mercury moving into Scorpio is going to change the energy. And then within, let's see, that same time, we got Mars square the sun in Chiron on that day, the sun opposite of Chiron. So the sun, really ourself, more healing work, more mentor work, because Chiron is not just about our wounds and healing our wounds or experiencing our wounds. It's about being the healer. So with the sun there's an opportunity for us to be in service and to be mentors, to be helping others heal through our own healing. And so that's why Chiron's pretty awesome. It's not a malefic by any stretch. And let's see what else. Mars does a little semi-sextile to Jupiter while it's sextile to Chiron on that day. And so even though it's a brief little connection between Jupiter and Mars, it's still bound to like light up the power of Mars and Chiron and whatever it's trining up here, the sun and planets up here basically are all in trine. So it's just going to add a little more power and oomph on the 13th. Watch yourself, right? It's going to could be a pretty big day. Might get some shit done, right? 14th, Venus opposite to Uranus. So once again, I'm going to say Uranus retrograde in Taurus. It's going to be retrograde for a while, another, few months. And Uranus has been, we had a conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus not too long ago. And, a lot of stuff has gone down over this last summer, right? A lot of changes that we weren't able to predict. We knew something was coming, but we didn't know what it was. And Uranus kind of like just kicks the can over of things, and it just, spews it all over the place so it can reconfigure. So here comes Venus doing its opposition. So if you're in flux in your relationships, if you're in flux in your job, your career, if you're moving to a new location, if your aesthetic conditions are changing, this is when it's going to happen. This is when it kind of like cruxes out, that we get the change kind of like starts to really get going when this opposition with Venus happens. So turbulence in the relationships can lead to resolution and strengthening. That's the whole point. Sometimes it leads to breakups. Sometimes things need to end. But that choice is one that nobody else can make and is never or rarely 100% sure. If you're sure, well, move on. But if you realize, oh, I've got stuff I'm bringing to the table that I'm working on, that I need to, if I change some of the neurotic patterns I have, perhaps everything will start to flow a little better. Maybe it is me to a certain extent, because it always is. I used to say that every relationship is 100% responsible for both people in it, or all the people in it. And so here we have this little crux moment, right, with Venus trine to Neptune, uncertainty, the imaginal, imagination, creativity, sextile to Pluto, close, it's getting closer, who is also still sextile to Neptune. So there's a little minor Grand Trine developing here with this opposition. We'll move it along a little bit and see that Venus kind of stays in that minor Grand Trine, kind of firms up its thing to its connection, its sextile to Pluto. And just as it crosses over from mysterious and dark Scorpio, we get into happy-go-lucky Sagittarius. Flip right when it's sextile to Pluto. So that could be some unexpected exuberance in your relationship, some passion, some deepening of that connection in a really good way, as long as it isn't a plutonic power trip, as long as it's not a neurotically driven power play, right? Unlikely with a sextile, but it's possible. we always get the possibility of doing either the positive or the negative expression of each archetypal planet and aspect. And so this is where I believe free will comes in, because we just keep on choosing the good. And we have to decide what that is moment to moment, and deeply philosophically, what is the good, so that our most evil, malevolent, darkest, suppressed sides don't just take over and fuck everything up, right? So Venus sextile to Pluto can kind of go either way, but it's more likely to work out well. It's more likely to have this realize, oh my God, I am love at my core, and I just want to be the best partner I can possibly be. And, I love you very much. So let's look forward to that coming up. That's October 17th when it passes over. Heading towards the moon doing its full moon, which is actually on the 17th. We've got the full moon coming up in, it's actually, I'll move it back a few hours so we'll get the exact full moon right at 24 degrees of Aries. Aries full moon near Chiron, with Juno right there conjunct the sun, square to Mars. That's going to be interesting. We still got this Venus thing, like I said, so we're drawing up a lot of unconscious material and idealism for our relationship stuff. And that's international relationships as well as personal. And then Mars is right here, coming opposite Pluto. Not yet, but it's getting there. But it's really these squares to this opposition, to this full moon. So Mars square is going to be like, the shadow side would be, of course, battle, war, conflict, because that's always possible. It's square Chiron as well. So it's the wounded healer. It's our wounds. It's our deep stuff. It's our deep original wounds as humans. It's the human condition and how we relate to that human condition that Mars is going to respond to. With the moon right there, it's going to be a very felt kind of experience. So this upcoming full moon on the 17th is bound to be another pretty interesting moment. Now, there's something else I really want to share with you. See if I can get to it without too much sturm here. Nah. Where are you? Nope. There it is. I want to show you, those of you who've stuck with this for the last 45 minutes, that every aspect is actually a wave that doesn't just happen at once. This is today, and you can see that there's these long-term influences, and they come in waves and kind of cross each other, so that as each planet has a kind of cross influence, everything's a wave. Everything's happening over a period of time. It isn't just at a peak. And I just wanted to share that with you, because a lot of these aspects, even though I talk about the day it happens, like a full moon or an exact aspect, it's really been sort of building and then falling and interacting with everything else that's building and falling, like a choppy sea that can get really confusing sometimes, because we've got a lot of peaks and valleys happening all at once. But basically, you have to look at the overall pattern and realize that you might be feeling some of these things way before it peaks and afterwards. Some of the experiences that I'm talking about may arrive slowly over time and fade away over time, or they may feel like it just happened right now, but the ripple effects will continue on. So one of the things we have is this eclipse that just happened. And the next series of eclipses is in March of 2025. And when that occurs, it will relate back to this eclipse and also set the tone for the next 6 months, the next eclipse season. They just wave through our lives. And I use the astrology just to keep my perspective from getting too closed down, too personal. So I hope this forecast helped. I know it's long. I've not been doing this solo for a while. I wanted to say that Fina's taking a little sabbatical, that she is doing her work on the side and not doing the reports right now. But that's all right. She's still there. She's still available for consultations. She's just not doing videos right now, which is great. But it also, I'm like trying to figure out how to do this on my own and doing slightly different ways of technologically figuring out how this all works. So you'll see me in a couple of weeks. There's also my written reports, which go out each week as we do the moon phases through the quarter moons and the new moons and the full moons. I'll still be doing the written reports that you find on Instagram and on Facebook. Please subscribe. Please let me know how this goes. What else you'd like to see. I'll do some shorter ones as well so that we can get some, those of you who don't have 45 minutes to give to my rambling talks, or 50 minutes now almost. I really appreciate those who are subscribed and those who listen and are with me through these adventures as we go through these changes. And good luck this week. Dig in. Don't let it get you down. Recognize it will pass, but it's an opportunity. And if you can, do your best to show up and own what is yours and call out what is not yours, and see if you can come to that Mars trine Venus compromise where everything kind of starts to fall into place for everyone. All right, blessings. Have a great afternoon. Ciao.